Okay, jumping from one job to another. So here we have Dom's brand new Tanglewood, and this is not a bad sounding guitar. Nice satin finish, everything about it. It's got a sort of tech wood fingerboard, kind of. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's sort of made to look a bit like ebony, but it isn't quite. It's got pretty new strings on it. It's a new guitar, brand new guitar, but it's come with a high action, and as with his other guitar, his request to me is make it as good as it can be. So I'll just quickly fly you around it so you can see it. Square top, nice logo-y thing there, black ebony style fingerboard, all looking brand new, lovely satin finish, tidy bridge, lots of room in the saddle there, everything nice and flat, nothing standing out. It's not an electroacoustic, but it's got mahogany, well, sapele sides by the looks of it, and probably neck as well. So it's a nice looking beastie, nothing wrong with it, and he got it for a ridiculously cheap price of 90 quid, I think, new. So that's a bargain. Again, not wired up or anything, so it's just ready to play acoustically. But having said that, make sure we're still on and everything. It's a fine sounding beastie. So what am I going to do with it? Well, I'm going to reduce the action at both ends, fit new strings, but fit a new Tusq nut as well. So as always, I'm going to measure my start point. Now the changing of the nut is not for the sake of anything particularly wrong with the height of this one, it's just that it's plastic. So we're just going to go with an improvement if we can. So currently we've got 3.2 on the low E and 2.75, 3.2, 2.75, 3.2, 2.75, 3.2, 2.75 on the high E, on the low E, last fret. Now what we want is, we sort of typically target 1.2 and we want 1.5. Blimey. 1.25. So 1.25 off the high string and 1.2 off the low. So about the same. So that's a fairly straightforward cut. Now what I've done is I've got myself some brand new sanding strips, so we're going to make this a lot easier. So I'm just going to get straight into taking everything off. This is a fairly swift job because it is. I'm sure these are decent strings, but I don't know who they're by or from. It's been interesting finding seeing more and more fake strings coming up. Loose? Yeah, I bought a set of fake Ernie balls the other day to basically feature them and do a test and see exactly what ways they differ, and they certainly do, which I found out. I did a video about it yesterday and amazingly uploaded it today because this is going to be the first customer. See that pinging noise? That's the plastic nut catching the string, so we definitely want to be done with that. Now you could work on the plastic nut for some time. It's not impossible to work it so that you basically you can widen the nut slots. These are all a bit sort of tight, these, because they're new, so I'm just gently hoiking them up. Yeah, so you could work a plastic nut until you get the right heights you want, and until you loosen them up with sanding, careful sanding for loosening. I'm such a plonker. What am I doing? I'm not thinking. I need to leave these in. Get in there. Get in there. I need the strings in. Fool. Anyway, yeah, so you could make a plastic knot work. It's just a lot harder to do, and even if you do, it still doesn't have the sort of it still doesn't have the built-in lubrication that Tusq has. So I highly recommend that you stick with Tusq, even if the default nut kind of works. Now this is a plastic saddle, which isn't particularly good or bad. The saddle is less of a problem. You know, if you were only going to upgrade one bit, I would say upgrade the nut, because the saddle, the strings hardly do any moving in relation to the saddle. They do pull a tiny fraction across the saddle, you might say, but very little. So the first thing I'm going to do, two things. I'm going to line this up for taking it down a size, and I'm also going to tap off the existing nut. Now I've been in this in this game for quite some time. You have to gauge how well fitted this is. It's pretty tightly done, actually. Ooh, I don't know what that's in the front of there. Something caught in the front. It all comes down to how they glued this on in the factory. Was it, you know, have they put a ton of glue? Is it gonna come out? I might have to give it a little bit of back support there. So that's a little cracking sound of making the breaking the glue seal. I'm going to just tap it a bit this way. So then we're going to just have a feel. Now this is glued very heavily. I can feel it already. If we pull up this way, we'll get it off, but we don't know what we're going to take off with it, and I don't really think there's an awful lot we can do about it, I'm afraid. It's there you go. It's not bad, horrible nut, and it's not taken any of the wood, thankfully, but it's left a bit of the plastic behind, but I'm happier with that than the other way round. It's always the way. So basically the only real challenge is get rid of this bit of trapped, caught, glued plastic. Thank you. Now there's a little bit of a flake of wood there, but it's underneath everything, so it's not a problem. It's not going to cause any trouble. So the thing to do at this point is just to ensure that there's no high bumps sticking up from here, that everything's smooth as possible. Now just looking at this, I can see that it's not cut square exactly. There's a sort of bit of a wandering line on this, but it's not going to be a major problem. But again, a bit more careful sort of chiseling in to eke out the gungy stuff. Now here we have our replacement. Can never guess it quite right for height straight off. We can only usually go for string spacing. That's it. If you get the string spacing right, you've got a good start, which is this is the right string spacing. So what I'm going to be looking at is, that was a good action there. So I'm going to take my initial lead off here. If I can figure where I've put the thing, I'm going to take this off here, and I'm going to. We're running, aren't we? Hey, I'm going to measure the bottom of the high E notch 825, and this one is quite a bit higher. So we'll tell what it is. It's not 825, it's 988. So 825, 988, let's just get that written down. 825 is where it was, and it was pretty good. What did I say? 988. 988. One from the other way round. 988. So 5 from 8 is 3. 2 from 8 is 6. 1.63. That's the amount to take off here to get it to where it was. So let's do both of these. 1.63 and 1.2. Get our pencil as sharp as we can, or failing that, a pen. And we're going to do along here first. We'll do the 1.2. Small amount of distance, really. Here's 1.2. It's a little ridge along the end of this saddle here, but it's not quite 1.2, it's a little bit higher than 1.2, but I'll use it, I can see it as a guide. So really the key thing here is to get the nut changed out, get it to the right height. What I don't want to do, even with a fixed nut, I don't want to cut into the nut slots. Oh, this is great. That's not a permanent marker, so it's not going to mark it permanently. So I'm going to try and just mark this up so I can show what I'm taking off. Ugh, come on. There you go. That's the amount to take off that one. And then this one, 1.63. Yeah, we want to get this to as close to the height. Now, the thing about this, that was pretty close before. If we go 1.63, I think when we reduce it down that end, we might be a little bit too much. So why don't we go, let's begin with 1.4 to begin with, and let's not push it past there. Let's see what that gives us first, and then we'll reconsider once we've fitted it and put the strings back on. So there's my mark. Again, I'd probably be better off marking this with the pencil. I don't quite know what we're looking at, sorry. Let's look down there. Problem with this mic is I can't scratch my eye because it will put my finger in the mic. Okay, so there's the mark. Yeah, the whole point about the Tusq nut is to get it fitted in such a way, if possible. It's not always exactly possible, but get it fitted, if possible, in such a way that we're not cutting down into the nut slots. If we can, it works perfectly okay if you do have to cut down into the nut slots. However, the idea being is if we can do it without that, then we are getting the best of all worlds, in that we're getting the factory-made slots, the nice condition of the factory-made slots, and we're getting the advantage of the Tusq as well. So that's the idea. Let's look at this beautiful brand, fresh new piece of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to take it down at both ends. Now we've got a main task, as always, is to cut it down evenly, but do it in such a way that we keep the base perpendicular to the sides. And that's not always easy to do. We end up leaning one way too far and the other way too far. So it's a bit of sort of backwards and forwardsing to begin with, getting it closer to our target height, and then progressing to, I would say, a finer grit to finish it off and make sure we kind of move in on the, that's not one, we finish it off on the finer grit so we don't overcut anywhere. Same applies to this one. We've got to keep this 90 degrees. Again, we can move a lot of material first, then I can spot that it's leaning too much forward, so I'll now rock it backwards a little bit and level it out as we hopefully straighten it up at the same time as get close to the final height. Let me switch around to what we got going out there. NATO helicopters or something, G7 helicopters. Okay, so now we're on the 120 grit, sort of aiming to come down to the mark and do it upright as much as possible. What's this, UFOs or Chinooks? My Mr. President, Okay, so getting there. Now I did this one, the 1.2 on here. If you remember, I'm doing it 1.2 as measured at the saddle, so that's going to give me some leeway. It won't take it down quite as far as that at the last fret, which is where I did my measurement. So I can be, we're on the sort of conservative side of things, so I can go to this mark confident that it's not going to be overdoing it in any way, shape or form. So I'm just squaring it off now for the moment, and then we'll be ready to refit. We're on the line. Pretty good. The consideration as well when you're doing this is if you're going to lower the saddle, you have to know that you're going to end up with the correct amount of, you still have enough break angle of the strings coming up over the saddle. In this case, I'm pretty confident that we do, because they were so high, the saddle itself was so high to begin with. Okay, we're now coming towards the line, close to the line on the nut, and now I'll go to the finer section, and then this is just about finishing it to the line and doing it whilst we're still got a vertical, and it is a bit of trial and error, or skill and judgment. So these two, that's where I go start on. So this is a sort of quick test now. So what I want to do straight away is try this out, because we've got the nut is going to probably move around. It's sort of better if we try and do the, well, I was going to say do the middle strings first to try and keep it in place, but as you can see, extricating the string we want from this pile of strings is actually quite difficult, and that wants to be the D. So I'm just going to get this on quickly. Now, some people will go, oh well, you could have worked out exactly how much you needed to take off the saddle. I like to do it that I work it out and treat it as if it's exact, even though I know I can go lower here. Okay, so I start with it as if I can't, and then I've built myself. So the whole point being is 1.2 at the 12th fret, sorry, last fret, translates into, in this case, about a third higher or something at the, whatchamacallit, that thing, saddle. So it would need to be more than that. So I start with it at the same, I cut the same amount as I want to lose at the last fret. Now that means it won't actually take me down that far, but it's a good start. We're not far off there. So before long I can, when we got this all done up, I can check how high these are, and then we have a final target for the last bit of nut reduction, and we can also estimate if we can do any more on the saddle, if it's a good idea to or not. So even though these strings look pretty new, they came with the guitar and they're pretty good, fresh, new strings. The reason I don't like to use them, and once I've used them as sacrificial strings, is for exactly this reason. I'm kind of stretching them and re-stretching them by rewiring them and tightening them and slacking them and so on. And we need the freedom to do that while you're setting up. Get in there. And these two left. So about the wasps try and sting you. So yeah, this is right now is the start of the G7 summit down in Cornwall. So not far from here are the world's, inverted commas, leaders. Meeting, but there are some pretty depressing things that have already gone on in, or what I hear in Cornwall, that people, arguably some unscrupulous people, have used G7 as an opportunity to flout planning process. So the hotel, I think, where the powers that are were going to stay, these are spaced incorrectly. That's terrible spacing. It's a great big uneven spacing. I'm going to have to cut a different notch there. Yeah, I think, was it Carpus Bay Hotel, apparently applied for planning permission to build some more guest bedroom type lodges and were turned down. And so miraculously they waited for G7 to come around, and then they reapplied to build some special accommodation just for the leaders, world leaders at this event. And you won't believe it, but the accommodation they proposed and got approved for was exactly the same as the ones they got turned down for earlier, which is funny. So they got their way by using the G7 as a ruse. Check their heights. So, like I said, we know this won't be at 1.5 and 2, or 2 and 1.5. In fact, it's just fractionally higher, so it's about 2.5 and 2. So we can still go down some on the on this. So we could go down 0.5 mil comfortably, or 0.5 mil conservatively. I don't mean much. Don't mean much more. That's a horrible sound. That will just lock in for now. Yeah, I mean not much more, but we could do 0.5 mil more on the saddle. Right, so let's just check the saddle height. Saddle height is the nut height, because I think we could still go down a bit there. So getting there bit by bit. What have we got? I've probably got about, so that's 0.4. We've got, let's go 60.6. 0.6, let's go 7, let's go 0.9, that's going to be too much, but yeah, too much. 7, it's 0.8, let's call it 0.8, so first fret is 0.8, so we want to minus 0.4 off that again. And the saddle, we can take 0.5 off that. So that's our last two adjustments to be made. Here we go. Yep. Well, that's good, because I ain't going to do that again. You see that? That's why we never reuse the so-called sacrificial strings, because these darned things, you know, break. Right, so that's just as well, because, as I say, we don't have any. Get that one out. I think we might as well just take all of them out right now, because that's it. They've had their day. This one, I don't like how this one's gone at all. Oh, doesn't feel good at all. Right, so that's it. Busted string, a busted flush. Okay, so I'm going to take down the nut and the saddle one last bit, and then we'll reinstall. I'll get rid of these strings now because they've done their service. I'll just be keeping an eye out on the string, the nut. I'm pretty certain this is right for this gauge, or it's good for this gauge, but if I hear any what's the word, pinching or anything, then I'm going to take it down or widen the slots just a tiny little bit. Okay, so we get the lovely brand new thingy board. Now, rather than draw things on it now, because it won't really make much difference, what I'm going to do is I'm going to this is terrible spacing. There's a really bad spacing here. I'm going to have to wait until we're back in place. We've got 22. That should be about 11 if we're halfway, and that's miles off. What's the width of this thing? I don't like the fact that they've already started out with one wrong. 72. Have we got a 72? Yes, indeed we do. Is this correct? No, that's not the right one for my liking. Forward, backwards, not right. No, no, no. 72. That's 72 as well. That's the same. That's the same. Nope, 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 and nope. Now we're going to have to work with what we've got. I can't see any more. Tusq and Tusq. Nope. Nope. Alright, we've got to work with this one. We just have to move the string slightly. Okay, so anyway, come back to where we started. We've got to take 1/2 mil off, so I'm going to measure it from the base notch. So we've got 695, so I want 640, and I just need to keep it in a straight line. So we're going to keep the same all the way across. Base side, 680, 640 on the base side. Ow. Somebody's radio. Is it a party? 692, 640, 670. 670, 668. $656. Finish it in here. Looks good. Clean it up. $650. Did I say? I said $640. That'll do. Okay, we're taking off 0.4 off here. Right, measure off the height side. 0.4, did I say? No. What did I say? 0.4, half a mil. So we've got, let's actually do it in here. In the slot we've got 814. So we're going to take 775. We want to be at 775. Ooh, 780. Look at that. Smooth it out. Check it for lean. Lovely. Done. That's a lot. So, sort of the homing in approach, really. That's all there is to it. Get it there in stages. Don't do it in one go. So, before you glue anything down, check that the fit is good. Yes, yes, and yes. Now, I saw young. What was it? Young. Who was it? Was it? Oh, I'm getting lost. Was it young Nick or was it young Kenny? I think it might have been young Kenny. He was putting the nut in place, courtesy a couple of dabs of wood glue. Now that's a nice little touch for a change. So I rather fancy that myself. Obviously it won't stay there at the first go right off the bat, but if you're careful and you do the center strings first and then get it all lined up, you have room and time to do so, and then your strings should hold it all in place. Now D'Addario strings, you'll notice, so far no sign of ever having seen any fakes of these, and there's a code as well which I think could be even part of their thing of protecting from fakes, so good for them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the strings and dangle them off sideways first. These are so much nicer than the ones that were on there. Beautiful bright phosphor bronzy colour, shiny and lovely. So down you go. It will fit the middle one first. Middle two, I should say, and see if we can hold the thing in place. I'm sorry, I've completely given up any sense of what we're looking at here because it's Friday night and it's late now. We're almost at the longest day of the year. Yeah, this is a particular saddle, so I've got a few spare saddles, but none of them would do quite this job, so I don't want to make a mistake of fitting the wrong one. The intonation difference could be just enough to throw it out and make it horrible, so you've got to map the pattern, and if you don't map the pattern, don't fit a different one, stick with the one you've got. Or if you have to replace it, then make another one from scratch that's exactly the same, which isn't impossible to do if you got the time and patience. Now this says acoustic nut, and I'm just not concerned, but I just want to be sure that there's no gripping and that the slots are adequate. Okay, I'm going to pull back a fret's worth and run it on. Oh, so that is what's going to happen. So the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to pull the nut backwards, especially doing it this way. So it was a nice idea, and I think it's a good idea actually, because this nut was staying on perfectly without being glued. But I think I've got to just rethink my stringing technique for a second, because it's almost certainly going to pull the nut back to begin with. That's nice, but it's got to be careful. So this nice new guitar, this is a typical adjustment of action that you're going to want to do on almost every new acoustic guitar. It's absolutely bog standard for the acoustic guitar to come with a nut action that's too high, a horrible plastic nut that will really resist the guitar staying in tune, which you don't want to suffer from. So to overcome that, you'd be wanting to replace the nut with a Tusq one, and lowering the saddle the way I did. And the only constraint being, if you're lowering the saddle, you've got to make sure that there's enough material in the saddle to lower. Sometimes there isn't in older guitars and you're stuck at that point. So there's enough saddle to lower, and if you do lower it, then you've got to be confident that you've got enough break angle of the string going up and over the saddle to press down on the saddle and make a good physical connection, so it transfers its vibrations through into the body of the guitar, into the top of the guitar I should say, through the bridge. And of course if it doesn't have that break angle, not only won't it transfer the vibrations very well, but it will also risks the string kind of lifting off the saddle and going straight through, so it loses that fulcrum point altogether, and the string doesn't resonate properly, or doesn't play properly. So this is an interesting one for me, because I don't normally use wood glue, but I thought I'd give it a go, because I've had so many annoying accidents with overly glued over-glued nuts recently, that I don't want to have any more in the future. So I thought it's a good time to experiment with something lighter. So I know the wood glue will stick, and it will probably stick enough to hold the nut where I want it, but the only reason you need to hold it there is in between string changes, because it stays where it should during the playing life of the guitar, because the force of the strings pressing down holds it in place. So it's really only something to keep it there in between when the strings are off and you're replacing them. Okay, so the good thing about this is you've still got a bit of adjustment room, so you can move it, which you don't get when you do it with super glue. You've got to be straight on the mark from the first go, or you get no second goes at it, or you have to knock it off, which is a pain. So this could be a new way of doing it for me. So we're almost there. So once I put the strings on, I'm going to stretch them out some, and what I'll also do is to make sure the nut is where I want it. I'm not sort of leaning off anywhere. And partly I can, if I'm not sure, I can just tap it with whatever I've got, just to make sure it's butted up against the end of the fingerboard, which it certainly does feel like. Now the action looks really nice and low down here now. It's going to increase a little bit as I tune up. And the neck will pull a little bit of relief into the neck. Now before I go too much further. I'm just going to take a quick look at the spacing down here. Well, it's okay. It's not brilliant. I'm going to leave it. It's not bad. It's sitting in one of two slight ruts that it's made. It's obviously been in the wrong place to begin with. Going to do it again, isn't it? Wow, super low. There you go, ladies and gents. Dirty hands, clean guitar, job done. A little bit of stretching at home, but that's it. Nice new low action, new strings, new Tusq nut. Stay in tune, no problem with that from now on. And yum yum, difference. That is low as anything down here, low as anything down that end, but it all plays just within the within the range of which you would need fret leveling. It's just inside that range, which is what I've always found with I'm going to chuck this plastic nut away because nobody should use that again. Yeah, that height, I found that most 6-string guitars can go to that, acoustic guitars can go to that without needing fret leveling. So there we have it. That's my Friday evening session done. It's time to go home and put my feet up and watch some YouTubey things on our new ultra fast, and make a video of this and upload it. So you can see this was straightforward in the sense that with the experience to know what you can do, it's quite straightforward to do. If you're doing it for the first time and you haven't done it before, it's going to be a bit more nerve-wracking to calculate how far you can take the action down to, what how to get it to where you need it, and how to fine-tune it right to the end. And getting it to the end, you notice I calculated first, marked it up with a pen, took it down to the line, put it into the guitar again, and then the next time round I made the judgment by using the digital caliper to measure, to see, to gauge when I was getting down to the right height, and I was confident enough to be able to stop exactly at that height, knowing I was exactly at the right action. So there we have it. Beautiful. All right, thanks for watching. See you soon, because this will be in real time almost.